Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 16823, municipal address 353 Eagle Heights here in Canmore. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Christoph Breyer, and I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel today. The other panel members with me today are Karen Mara and Laura Clippingday. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? I see none. That's great. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant or complainant's representative. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your role in the hearing. Please indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint.
My name is Eric.
Would you please come to the podium here?
My name is Eric Stork. I am the complainant and the owner of 353 Eagle Heights.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now to the respondent, would you please, sorry? Okay, thank you. And now to the respondent, would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your position with the municipality?
Sure, I'm Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. Thank you. The standard practice is as follows. Have the complainant present all the evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize the evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let me know. Let the panel know as soon as possible, and we can address those things as we go. I will also take this time to remind everyone to please turn off any mobile devices, including mine. Done. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as we laid out? Perfect, great. I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure? Perfect. Are there any other preliminary issues for the panel to address? Okay. Here we go.
This hearing is for tax roll 16823, and the evidence is for complainant package marked C1, the complaint form of 1 page. The complainant package marked C2, the complainant disclosure of 4 pages. The complainant package C3, the complainant rebuttal of 4 pages. And the respondent package marked R1, the respondent disclosure of 55 pages.
Thank you. Are there any other preliminary issues for this panel to address? I see none. We'll start the presentation, and Mr. Stork, We are ready to hear your evidence. If you're set to go ahead.
So, good morning, members of the board. My name is Eric Stork, and I'm here to respectfully present my case regarding the property tax assessment by the town of Canmore of my home at 353 Eagle Heights. For the 2025 tax year, the town of Canmore has assessed my property at $1,571,000. After a careful analysis of market data and comparable sales, I believe the correct fair market value is significantly lower at $1,335,228. That is a difference of nearly $236,000, or about 15%. This is not a small discrepancy. For a homeowner, this difference translates into thousands of additional dollars in annual property taxes. My home has been valued above what the market evidence supports, and that undermines both the fairness and equity in the assessment process. This morning, I will provide context for the legislative framework guiding assessments, summarize the true characteristics of my property, present the market evidence showing its fair value, and respond directly to the assessor's arguments, point by point. Property assessments in Alberta are governed by the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. These laws require that assessments must be based on market value, and they're not subject to individual subjective judgment. Market value is measured as of July the 1st, 2024, reflecting the property's physical condition as of December the 31st, 2024. While assessments use a mass appraisal process, the law is clear. Assessments must represent what a willing buyer would have paid to a willing seller in the open market at the valuation date. Nothing more and nothing less. Mass appraisal uses statistical methods to arrive at a probable sales price for a certain property, and a small amount of tolerance could be expected within a range of possible values. I will submit, however, that 15% or more than $235,000 is in excess of this tolerance. The valuation applied to my property makes it an extreme outlier with respect to its valuation based on actual measurable metrics, and it should be reassessed to a value which regresses it to the mean per unit of utility. I recognize that property taxes fund many worthwhile services for the citizens of Canmore, and I'm not asking to be excused from paying them, but I do insist that I pay an equitable amount. The subject home is located at 353 Eagle Heights in the neighborhood of Eagle Terrace. It's not a large home. It measures 1,634 square feet above grade with a 534 square foot finished basement. Total developed area is 2,168 square feet. It was built in 2000, and while cozy and well-loved, it's not large, and it does not feature the high-end finishes or luxury upgrades seen in many comparable neighboring homes. The legal framework for property tax assessments requires that the valuation applied be based on fair market value. This home did not sell in the year 2024, so valuation must be inferred from actual comparable sales. In 2024, 8 homes in Eagle Terrace sold. Overall, for 2024, the average price per square foot was $615.88. Contrast that with my home's assessed value of $724 per square foot. This is a difference of 15% and is well in excess of any reasonable tolerance afforded the assessment model used. The respondent has argued that some of these sales were post facto sales and occurred after July the 31st, 2024. They've also argued that using total square footage is misleading and that basements should not be considered to contribute equally to the valuation. However, stripping out these post facto sales and analyzing the comparables to reflect only above grade square footage yields results which are astonishingly similar. A table with these data can be found on page 18 of the respondent's submission. Analyzing these results yields a near identical conclusion. The comparables provided by the respondent were assigned a valuation of $824 per above grade square footage, whereas the subject property was assigned a value of $960 a square foot. This represents an inflation of the subject property's assessment by 16%. The assessor also suggests that I ignored lot size and that this distorted the results. However, the data they have provided does not demonstrate a clear relationship between the size of the lot and the valuation of the house on it. The subject property is on a relatively small lot at 5,914 square feet. Only one house sold in 2024 on a smaller lot, and it sold for a price per square foot of $868 per above grade square feet. Another house sold on a lot more than twice the size of the subject property, and it sold for $758 per square foot. Both of these examples were assessed a value per above grade square foot, which is far below my assessment of $960 per above grade square foot. These data do not demonstrate any clear association between lot size and the valuation of the home on it, and do not justify the inflated assessment assigned to my home. The assessor claims that they have used regression analysis to arrive at assigned values as part of mass appraisal, but they provide no data on the variables that they have concluded, the relative weights assigned to these variables, or the accuracy of the model. Without transparency, the regression model cannot be tested, verified, or cross-examined. It is essentially a black box, and the message from the assessor is, trust me. In contrast, my analysis is transparent, reproducible, and based on publicly verifiable sales. While I do not doubt this regression model was engineered with good intentions, it clearly has limitations. When extreme outliers, such as the value of my property, are noted, then the model should be changed in a way to return these outliers towards the mean for any measurable unit of utility or value. Both my initial analysis based on total square footage, as well as the assessor's preferred metric of above grade square footage, produced similar and near identical results. They demonstrate that my property is assessed at 15 to 16% above fair market value. Additionally, the use of post facto sales demonstrates the same trend and reinforces the fact that the subject property has been assessed at above fair market value. Finally, the assessor claims that differences in assessments are due to differences in characteristics of the properties. They provide no details on what these differences are. Worse, in the evidence package submitted by the respondent, they label some comparable homes, which have been assigned a lower value per unit, as, quote, high quality, end quote, but make no such notation for the subject property. In the absence of data about what these differences in characteristics are, only objective and verifiable variables should be included. This is what my analysis has done and clearly demonstrates that the subject property should have its assessment revised. This board is tasked not only with checking numbers, but also with ensuring fairness and equity. An inflated assessment of one property does not just affect me, it distorts the relative fairness of the tax system, shifting an unfair burden onto one homeowner. If my home is allowed to remain assessed $236,000 above market value, I am paying more than my fair share, while other property owners with superior properties are paying less. This is inequitable, and it is exactly what this assessment review process is tasked to remedy. I want to be clear, I'm not asking for special treatment, I'm not asking to pay less than my neighbors, I'm asking only for an assessment that reflects reality, the fair market value of my home. The evidence shows consistently and clearly that the current assessment of $1,571,000 is inflated by at least 15%. The fair and equitable value supported by verifiable evidence and data is $1,335,228. I respectfully request that the board adjust my property's assessment to reflect this fair market value. Thank you for your time and attention. I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stork. Any questions from the respondent? None. Board questions. Are there any questions for Mr. Stork? I have a question for you, sir. In your assessment review board complaint form, you're stating $1,308,000 as the requested assessed value. And what we just heard is $1,335,228. Which one is correct?
I believe what I just stated, the $1,335,228 is in the town's favor, so I will stand with that. And that may have been recalculated based on an analysis of excluding post facto sales and above grade square footage.
So this is a typo then? Or has been done earlier?
That was the initial submission, and then more data was received.
Okay. So I'll change this to this number you
That can be
just said?
changed.
Okay. You had that? I have no further questions. The respondent evidence, please.
So good morning again. I'm here today to present the respondent's disclosure and respectfully request that the 2024 property assessment of $1,571,000 for 353 Eagle Heights be confirmed. The town will demonstrate that assessments must be prepared annually, the legislated standard is market value, and that assessments must be prepared using mass appraisal in a fair and equitable manner. So on pages 4 through 6, we have an exterior photo of the subject property, as well as aerial maps depicting where the subject property is located within their neighborhood. On page 7, we give some of the general property information for the subject property, being a residential detached home built in 2000. So on to page 8, I'll go through some background on how property assessments are prepared in Alberta, and the complainant's already described a lot about the market value, so I'll skip over that part. And they had also mentioned the valuation date as well as condition date. So as mentioned, property assessments for the town of Canmore are prepared in accordance with the requirements through the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. The legislation further stipulates, after the market value is number 1, that an assessment of property based on market value must be prepared using mass appraisal, must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in the property, and must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. So mass appraisal is the legislated methodology used for valuing individual properties, and it involves the following process. Properties are stratified into groups of comparable properties. Common property characteristics are identified for the properties in each group, and then a uniform valuation model is created for each property group and then applied back to that same property group. So property assessments for detached residential properties in the town of Canmore are determined using the market-modified cost approach. This approach is a hybrid of both the cost and the sales comparison approaches to value. Under this approach, all improvements are first valued based on the cost approach, and then these values are adjusted to reflect the current market conditions based on the sales transactions. This is the most appropriate method of valuation because it mirrors the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace, and there is sufficient sales data to derive reliable market estimates. So now on page 12, you can see the property data that we have on the subject property. These residential ratepayer reports that we've included for the subject property, as well as all the comparables that have been provided by the respondent and the complainant. These reports can be found further in our submission. However, they do include all of the property characteristics that are used in the valuation of the subject property. So we can see on this page that this is a 1,636 square foot, semi-custom, 2-story and basement home in the Eagle Terrace market area. So now onto page 14. The complainant relies heavily on a sales price per square foot analysis, and this method is not an accepted appraisal practice. Simply using an average per square foot is in contravention of the appraisal principles of economies of scale. So economies of scale refers to the fact that a price per unit decreases with an increase in scale. So once the threshold for utility has been met, this additional square footage is not as valuable on a per square foot basis. This is most evidenced in the real estate market, where we can see that larger homes have a lesser per square foot value than smaller homes, with everything else being the same. So using a sale price or assessment per square foot also ignores property-specific characteristics, such as the lot size, the quality of construction, and other factors which would contribute to the value of a property. So we've included here case law, such as Tony Prysa versus the City of Edmonton, which rejects the simplistic approach, and other decisions have been provided on pages 14 through 15. The complainant also relies on sales of properties that transferred through Alberta land titles after the valuation date of July 1st, 2024. And it's important to note that the use of a post facto sale, which is a sale that occurred after July 1st, 2024, is restricted. The board may consider such post facto evidence to confirm market trends. However, post facto evidence cannot be used in setting value. We provide several decisions supporting this as well on pages 15 through 17. So now on to page 18. As mentioned, the market modified cost approach was utilized in the preparation of residential assessments for 2014. So sales from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024 were analyzed and used in the preparation of assessments. So listed below are sales of properties that are in a similar location to the subject property. These are all the same quality of construction and finishes, as well as being two-story with basement homes. The subject property has the smallest floor area, and mentioning it as above-grade floor area, as well as the smallest lot size. So the difference in the property characteristics that are mentioned on this table, as well as the evidence that we have provided on pages 32 to 40, the property assessment characteristics are directly attributable to the differences in the property assessment. So now on page 20, in contrast, the complainant's comparables include sales outside of the valuation period. Please note that sales identified in blue font on page 22 all occurred after the valuation date of July 1st, 2024. They should therefore be given no weight in determining the current assessment. The valuation date, as prescribed by provincial legislation, is July 1st, 2024. And this includes the first 6 sales on pages 22, leaving only 2 sales that were provided that fall within the valuation period. And those are the last 2 on the chart. Additionally, the complainant improperly calculates the per square foot values as they're including basement area in their calculation. And this really does dilute true market contribution. Not all square footage contributes equally to the overall value of a property. Above-grade living areas, such as the main floors, are typically more valuable than finished or unfinished basements. Buyers place greater value on features like kitchens, bedrooms, living areas that are located on the main levels. A basement, even if finished, does not generally command the same market value per square foot as above-grade space. This revised calculation, correcting the above-grade sale price per square foot, can be found on our chart, along with the corrected median value at $877. Again, that's the chart on page 22. So using a straight line price per square foot analysis doesn't account for key differences between properties. These differences can have a meaningful impact on market value, but are ignored in a simple calculation. Industry standard appraisal practices emphasize the use of mass appraisal models that consider a range of variables affecting market value, not just size. For an example of this can be seen on the differences of the lot sizes for the comparables provided. Some of the lot sizes are 2 to 3 times the size of the subject property, and this difference is completely ignored by the complainant's method of calculation. The complainant's approach also ignores diminishing returns on size. Market data consistently shows that smaller homes have a higher price per square foot than larger homes, all other things being equal. That is not because larger homes are worth less overall, but it is because the additional size does not command a linear increase in price. So on page 22, the chart provides, lists the differences of the subject property for the comparables that they have introduced. Again, as mentioned, details on this property detail sheets can be found on pages 41 through 48 of our disclosure as well, which lists everything down to plumbing fixtures that we use in the valuation. Using all the information that they have provided, it does support the property assessment on a per square foot basis. In summary, the subject property's 2024 assessment of $1,571,000 was prepared in accordance with the legislated mass appraisal requirements outlined in the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations, using the market modified cost approach. This method accurately reflects market conditions by adjusting cost-based values using local sales data from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024. The comparable sales analyzed by the respondent demonstrate clear market support for the assessment, with adjustments made for differences in property characteristics such as lot size, quality of construction, and overall utility. In contrast, the complainant's reliance on a simplistic price per square foot analysis, especially one that includes basement area, fails to account for diminishing returns, property-specific attributes, or the actual behavior of market participants. As established in both legislation and case law, assessments must reflect the typical actions of buyers and sellers, not generalized averages. So with that, the respondent respectfully submits that the assessment is fair, equitable, and should be confirmed by the board at $1,571,000. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Benneman. Any questions from the complainant regarding the evidence provided by the respondent?
Sure, yeah, I'll just take a moment here.
If you want to go to that microphone, sir,
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'll turn that one on.
Yeah, no, I have some comments. I mean, first, the respondent has disputed or has invoked the notion of economies of scale as being of utmost importance, and that there must be a linear relation or an inverse linear relation between the size of a house and the value per square foot. But the actual data provided does not support that. You know, if you will look at their submission on page 22, there's a table of all the houses that were sold. My house is the smallest. It is on the top of the table there, tax roll 16823. Total square footage, 2,174 square feet. Next smallest house actually is on the bottom there, and was one of the very few houses that sold in the allowable period before July the 31st. 2,430 above grade square feet, and its sales price per above grade square foot was actually the lowest, was $625. Now, I don't have a calculator here, but that is a difference even bigger than the difference I'm invoking for my house versus all of the houses taken in aggregate. I suspect that is, 40 to 50% higher valuation per above grade square foot in a house that is similarly small to my own house.
And what is your question, Mr. Stork?
This is a rebuttal of...
No, we're not at rebuttal. We're
Okay.
asking questions.
My question is, I guess my question is, in previous tribunal hearings, you personally have stated that the assessment does not take into account decks, the condition of decks, exterior landscaping, interior finishings, things like appliances or appliance packages, which could easily be $100,000. These undeniably contribute to the value of a home, yet they are ignored.
Is there a question? Because I just wanted to clarify.
The question is, if you don't consider the square footage a primary factor, and that is easily verifiable, what factors precisely are used in the assessment, in the regression analysis, and what weight is given to each factor, so that this can be reproduced and verified, and the process is transparent?
Sure. So just to clarify the statement that you had made, you are correct. We do not assess decks. We do not assess landscaping, nor do we include appliances in the property assessment as they're considered chattels, which means they're not part of the real estate itself. However, when you mentioned interior finishing, that does come into play. That's part of the quality and construction finishes. That is actually a very strong proponent of the assessment. So with regards to your question as to what types of things are included in the property assessment and what things we look at when we're preparing assessments, these types of items for your property can be found on pages 12 of my submission. So we're looking at everything that a potential purchaser may be looking at when they're considering purchasing a property. So we're looking at important things such as the presence of a garage, the lot size, location, any kind of site attributes. So if you're backing onto the river or the creek, or if you're backing onto or facing a busy road, We take all those sorts of things into consideration. We also look at the square footage of the home. It is an important component. What my statement had been with regards to diminishing returns is that it is not a linear relationship where it continues to go up exponentially. What happens is once that point of utility is met, it starts to curve downwards so that each additional square footage, cost per square footage or value per square footage is no longer as high as that original starting point. And so that is the crux of that concept and that appraisal theory. So we also look at things such as not so much the year built, but the effective year built. And what the effective year built is it's the calculation of the original year built of the home, taking into account any additions or renovations or improvements to the property that have been made over time, so that it's being treated, so if a property's been renovated, it's being treated as a slightly newer property in comparison to all the other properties we're comparing it to. We also take into account, like mentioned, the quality of construction and finishing. So for the subject property, it's a semi-custom home. And we take into account the structure class, so it's a 2-story with basement home. We do have values for all of the improvements that are found under there. So full bath has values. And also basement finish, that's important to property owners, whether it's basement finish or if it's a basement suite, especially in the town of Canmore, it adds value. As well as the garage. Any other buildings that are on the improvement, they do add value. People want to park their cars in the garage, especially in the Canmore winter with all the snow. And any suites maybe that are above the garage area would be counted in there as well. So those are all of the variables that have been used in the valuation and producing the assessment for the subject property. And those same properties, the same property information can be found, as mentioned, from our evidence on pages 32 to 40 for our submission of our comparables, and then pages 41 to 48 of the complainant's comparables.
Thank you, Ms. Benneman. Any further questions, please?
No further questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the panel? No, thank you. I have a question for you. Looking at your page number 22, did I understand correctly? You could not use the first 6 comparables as presented by the complainant because they are not sold in the right time frame?
That's correct. They transferred through Alberta land titles after the valuation date of July 1st, 2024. So we always like to say assessors are really good at looking into the past, but we're not so good at predicting the future. And because we have that set date and time, any of those sales that are occurring afterwards, they're not included in our analysis. They're not included in the creating of the preparation of the assessments. So it's not really a fair process to bring them in afterwards to contradict the assessment. They'll be used in the preparation for next year's assessments.
Okay.
We're always a year delayed.
Yeah, thank you. And then on your page 18, these are the 3 comparables you used for your assessment. And my question is, the complainant provided tax roll 16028, 7 Terrace Place, like you have in your chart.
That's correct.
And then I'm seeing 17 Eagle Landing is included in the complainant's package, but it's not included in yours. Why is that not included?
Okay, so if you look at page 22 on the bottom in the comments section, the property at 17 Eagle Landing is a 2-story, no basement home. And so when we're preparing our comparables to defend the assessment, we're looking at as close as possible. So we're looking at location, we're looking at site attributes, we're looking at the quality of construction and finishes, and we're also looking at the property, the structure class. So all of the comparables that we provided were semi-custom quality homes that were 2-story with basements in the same market location.
And this one is not?
That one is a 2-story, no basement home.
Oh, it's 2-story, no basement.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Benneman. Let's move on to complainant's rebuttal evidence. If any questions from the respondent. Oh, so the complainant.
Okay, I've already provided my comments about economies of scale and about the assigning smaller homes a higher valuation. I mean, it's very convenient that 17 Eagle Landing was excluded from your analysis when you have spent a significant amount of time saying that above grade square footage is much more important than basement square footage. And so indeed, the house at 18 Eagle Landing is both larger in total. The above grade square footage is larger than the total square footage of my home and has no basement, yet the valuation is 40 to 50% less. So there seems to be something wrong with the econometric model which is producing your results. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think I was targeted, but I do think that there needs to be a process to identify these outliers. And ideally a process that doesn't require somebody going to the considerable effort it takes to get to this place and take all of your time, the time of everybody here today. So second, you noted that post facto sales are not technically allowed. Well, they are actually allowed very explicitly to confirm market trends. And very, very few homes sold during the allowable period, and that really using a market analysis of 2 homes is not valid. And so I think that the use of the homes during the allowable period and the use of the post facto sales, as I demonstrated in my presentation to you, leads to basically identical results. The trend is the same, and I stand by my conclusions.
Thank you, Mr. Stork. Any questions, please?
Okay, so a question for the complainant. You just made a statement regarding 17 Eagle Landing being larger overall than, including no basement area, than the subject property. And his statement is that it was, I can't remember, sorry, the percentage, but something like 10 or 20% that was greater or less than the subject property. And I just want to confirm that in that statement, he was speaking to the sale price per square foot rather than the total overall 2025 assessment.
I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but I think we can just go over the data here. The subject property, total square footage is 2,174 square feet. Of those, only 1,636 square feet are above grade. 17 Eagle Landing has a total square footage, all of it, which is above grade, is 2,439 square feet. Sale price for that home was $625 per square foot. If you want to analyze the assessed value of my home per total square foot, it was assessed at a value of $724 per square foot. That's including the basement. Take the basement out and use only above grade square footage, and we got a value of $960 per square foot. So choose your metric. Both 724 and 960 are significantly larger than the 630 assigned to the other property.
Okay, so just to clarify, just because I didn't get a clear answer, so just to clarify, when you're talking about the differences, you're strictly talking about the sale price per square foot. You're not looking at the total assessment for those properties.
The sale price is the fair market value of that house, and that is what I am referring to.
Sale price per square foot.
Sale price per square foot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Argument summation. Do you have any last words, Mr. Stork? No further comments? The respondent, any last words, please?
All right, so just to summarize, the subject's property for the 2024 assessment of $1,571,000 was prepared in accordance with the legislated mass appraisal requirements outlined in the Municipal Government Act and with matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. We feel that the comparable sales provided by the respondent demonstrate clear market support for the assessment, with adjustments made for differences in property characteristics such as lot size, quality of construction and finishing, and overall utility. In contrast, the complainant's evidence relies on a simplistic price per square foot analysis, especially one that actually includes basement area, and it fails to account for diminishing returns, property-specific attributes, or the actual behavior of market participants. As established in both the legislation and the case law that were provided by the respondent, the assessment must reflect the typical actions of buyers and sellers, not generalized averages. So with that, the respondent respectfully submits that the assessment is both fair and equitable and should be confirmed by the board at $1,571,000. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Last word by the complainant.
I rested my case.
Okay, thank you everyone for your cooperation and your helpful presentations. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days, gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity. Thanks so much. We're going in a 5-minute break, please. Okay. Good morning again, and welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public, and this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 22404, municipal address at Unit 4, 805 5th Street here in Canmore. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Christoph Breyer, and I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are Karen Mara and Laura Clippingdale. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? Awesome. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your role in the hearing? Please indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint. Would you please come to the mic here, to the podium? That would be awesome.
Hello. My name is James Midwinter, and I am the owner, along with my wife, of the property that you're discussing today. Number 4, 805 5th Street in Canmore.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Now to the respondent. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your position within the municipality?
My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. The LORP standard practice is to have the complainant present all of the evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible, and we can address those things as we go. I will also take the time to remind everyone to please turn off any mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as was laid out? Great, thank you. I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure? Here you go.
Thank you. For tax roll 22404, for evidence packages, complainant package marked C1 is the complaint form of 1 page. Complainant package marked C2 is the complainant disclosure of 6 pages. And respondent package marked R1 is the respondent disclosure of 55 pages.
Thank you. Are there any other preliminary issues for the panel to address? I see none. That's great. Let's start the presentation. All right, Mr. Midwinter, we are ready to hear your evidence. If you're set to go ahead, please.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, we have exchanged correspondence. And I think what's most relevant is my last correspondence, August 25th. I did supply some initial correspondence, which led me to think a little bit further about how I was approaching the appraisal question, caused me to refine my thinking, and so I'm going to focus on my arguments put forward in my last reply, which was August the 25th. So the assessor has provided, as I understand it, 6 properties that are said to be comparable to my unit for the purpose of establishing the market value of my unit. A couple of additional properties that transacted subsequent to the time frame involved and are put forward for additional perspective on value. So my unit is a 2-bedroom quadplex, yet it appears all the units offered for comparison are 3-bedroom quadplex units, save one, which is, as I believe I found out, a 2+ den. I'm making some assumptions there because the data does not, in some cases, explicitly tell me how many bedrooms, so I had to go online and look up all these units in the market to determine that they were all almost all larger units, and certainly all, as I say, all except for one, a 3-bedroom unit, the other one being a 2-bedroom plus den. So those are the units that have been put forward by the appraiser. I noted in my August 25th letter, the average 2025 assessed value of these 6 units on a per square foot basis is $703.61. That was actually a mathematical error on my part. It's actually slightly less. It's $698, but within very close to the number I provided, but actually slightly lower. So I'm a relatively simple person. If you took these supposedly comparable properties, which I didn't pick, the appraiser picked, save they are on average 185 feet larger, admittedly not a lot larger, but if you apply that per square foot value of those 6 properties to my unit using the 1,715 square feet that the town feels my unit is, or so I've been told, then the resulting value, 2025 appraised value, to me should be $1,197,000 versus the $1,304,000 which is being proposed by the appraiser, and that's quite a large discrepancy. The follow-up reply from the assessor said something to the effect that, well, it doesn't really work that way. The valuation cannot be adjusted on a straight-line PSF basis between larger and smaller units. But I haven't been provided any mathematical formula to describe how you would therefore adjust these units if you're not going to adjust them on a pro rata basis. I've not been provided any data to support that there should be a different approach taken. I understand the concept, but I haven't been provided any data that supports that you would get to 1,304,000 when a pro rata application of their own data would suggest 1,197,000. So that's my fundamental problem. It was the appraiser's decision to pick almost entirely 3-bedroom quadplexes, and I would argue, therefore, it is completely reasonable for me to look at it the way I've looked at it and apply these square footages and the average square foot value to my unit to arrive at the number that I've come up with. And indeed, my unit is a 2-bedroom unit, and it has less utility in the eyes of the market in any case. I do wonder why the appraiser did not select other truly comparable units, 2-bedroom condo units, as opposed to taking 3-bedroom units and then somehow magically arrive at a different valuation. that is not disclosed here. Now, the other issue which I raised in my letter of the 25th and earlier was, since so much seems to hang in the balance, the issue of the square footage of the unit. This unit was only constructed, well, essentially in 2020, though it says 2019. I purchased it at the very end of 2020 when it was complete, brand new, and it was provided at that time a surveyor's size of the unit of 1,559 square feet. And I've had some correspondence with the appraiser on this, and they're convinced that the unit is larger based on plans that were filed with the town. So we have this discrepancy, which is not a small discrepancy. It's 120 square feet. And it becomes particularly acute when you're starting to apply per square foot values against that 120 square feet. Again, my unit is 2 bedrooms. So this is discrepancy I can't rationalize. I have a surveyor that says they've calculated it according to the appropriate methodologies, and then I have the town saying it's something different. Finally, and perhaps not unrelatedly to the last question, I want to note 2 errors in the respondent's final disclosure, which was just sent in the last week. The subject property photo of this report is not showing my unit. It's showing the units on the other side of the quadplex. Those are 4-bedroom units, just to make sure that everyone understands what we're looking at here. And the second error, or second and third errors, is the location and aerial documents showing in red the subject unit. That is not my unit. That is a unit adjacent to me, so it is not my unit. So I don't know if these errors relate at all to further my case, if you will, but it does lend some concern on my part that these inaccuracies flow through into the calculation of my valuation. So I guess I'd just say in conclusion, the comparison properties provided the appraiser seem to support a valuation of around 1.2 million. And if my building area data is correct, or my surveyor's building area data is correct, it would be an even lower value of 1.13 million. And that really is that is really my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Midwinter.
Okay.
Any questions provided for the respondent? Yes, please.
Okay, so this question is for the complainant, and just asking for any clarification to the information you've provided regarding the square footage. Have you provided any evidence today to demonstrate that the square footage that the assessor has is actually incorrect?
Well, I can provide the
Mr. Midwinter, can you please come to the podium? Thank you.
I did provide the calculation and the source of the calculation, the name of the surveyor that was hired by the builder to calculate that information. Now, that may have been provided verbally, I don't recall. But I certainly have the documents from my builder that support the calculation which I've provided.
But you haven't actually provided any of your evidence to the board today?
I don't know if I have provided it in writing. I provided the calculation. I'm happy to provide further backup if that is requested. I actually have it in my file with me.
And it may be something that we could get from you after the hearing, but for today's purposes, there hasn't been any information actually brought forward to support the calculation that you're using.
I don't know what to do other than to provide the information that I have from the surveyor. I can't.
Sure. Yeah, and even on the
Yeah.
letter, on page C2, page 1, at the bottom, it just shows the RMS as being 1595, and then in brackets, as calculated by a local surveying company, so it doesn't have the name of the surveying
Oh,
company
well,
on it.
I'm happy to provide that to you
Yeah, and-
afterwards if you like.
And we would be appreciative of that,
Okay.
but it'll be after the hearing process
All right.
today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm asking to the panel, any questions?
I do have one. I do notice that on your initial complaint form that you have a request of $1,183,000. And in your August 25th complaint disclosure, C2, you have requested between $1,122,000 and $1,207,000. So is the secondary your request?
Would you please come up to the podium?
Your
So
last
on
point.
your
Yes,
initial complaint is this?
Yes.
And you've requested between the $1,122,000 to $1,207,000? Is that
Yes.
your request?
my more recent request
Yeah, your most recent.
is the more accurate one.
Is the more
As I say, I furthered my thinking, and as we exchanged information, I ended up coming to a different conclusion that I think is more accurate than my initial conclusion.
Yeah, no, just clarification for what you're
Yep.
requesting. Thank you. Good, thank you.
I actually have the same question. So if the most recent one is your ask, so is it 1,207,000 or is it 1,122,000?
Well, the 1,122,000 is if it was based, if the lower square footage, which I have from my surveyor, is indeed the accurate square footage, then the lower number applies. If you're applying the logic of the surveyor, or in my view, the logic of the appraiser, that these adjustments are done on a per square footage basis. So the higher number is based on the higher square footage, which the town believes my unit to be. The lower square footage that you just mentioned is based on the lower square footage. I mean, it seems to be that the larger the unit, the higher the value. So this is, I'm just applying those numbers pro rata to those two square footage calculations, because I cannot myself determine that the one number is correct or the other number is correct. I have a surveyor's number that says this number is correct. The town tells me, they look at their plans, they tell me the higher number is correct. So I'm just giving you the bookends of the two values.
Okay, I understand that, but my question is, what is your ask for requested assessed value?
The lower number,
The lower number, okay.
Because
So
I
you're
believe-
asking for 1,207,000?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then my second question is, you said in your presentation you have a two-bedroom condo fourplex unit, and you said there are other comparables, two-bedroom comparable units sold. I have not seen any evidence of those.
I'm not here to present information, alternative information. I'm not here to present, there are many other two-bedroom units that were sold in the town of Canmore and in the general neighborhood that I live in. And I'm sure the assessor knows that. I'm dealing with the assessor's data. The assessor said these are your comparable properties. I've looked at those comparable properties. I've adjusted them on a square foot basis. They're larger properties. They're three-bedroom units. I didn't pick them. They picked them. I don't think it's for, I need to go out and pick two-bedroom units. I think we'd find they're all at a lower value, but I didn't go that route. I'm just critiquing the approach of the appraiser to pick larger units and then somehow not make a fair adjustment of those units' value towards my unit's value based on an adjustment on a per square foot basis.
Okay, thank you. So you have not provided any
No,
two-bedroom
I'm
comparables?
not
Okay.
providing any other data to.
So that was my second question, and then my other question goes basically back to your letter from August the 25th as
Yes.
well. So it says in the letter, your RMS measurement is 1,595 square feet. I'm not seeing any RMS measurements here. I'm not seeing who did it. So you haven't provided that data yet.
Okay, fair point. I was just providing the data that was provided to me. I'm happy to provide it to the board or the assessor. I have it in my file, and it's from the home builder. And if that valuation would be applied, then as I said earlier, the assessed value would be even lower.
We haven't seen it. So
Yeah, fair enough.
for next time, I would recommend
Yeah.
put it in your evidence.
I'll bring it back next year.
Yeah. No more questions from my end? Any other questions?
I do have one question. So you were saying minus the 120 square feet, the assessed value would be 1.13 million in your earlier comments? That was the lowest.
The appraiser is proposing that my unit be valued at $1,304,000.
Yeah.
$1,304,000. My math, using their numbers, leads me to believe that it is $1,207,000 based on the larger square footage that the town thinks my unit is at.
But
Did I-
minus the 120 originally in your earlier comments, 120 square feet, your estimate was 1.13.
$1,122,000.
Okay.
That was my closing in the letter, that's the range based on this elusive size of my unit.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Sorry, this is just to clarify for the record. I believe I heard the complainant say that he was asking for the lower value, and that would be the 1.122. And I believe I heard you confirm it at 1.207, just for the record.
That's what I said, and that's what I was asking from the letter provided, 1,207,000.
Yeah, and the lower number would be the 1.122, which is, I believe, what I heard him say he was asking for.
No, I believe I heard the lower number of the 1,122 to
Yeah.
1,207,000. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, 1,122,000 is lower than 1,207,000. My error, I apologize. Let's go to the respondent's evidence, please, Ms. Benjamin.
Sure, thank you. We get it eventually. So I'm here today to request that the board confirm the 2024 property assessment for the subject property located at number 4, 805 5th Street in Canmore, which has been assessed at $1,304,000. The respondent disclosure outlines both the methodology used and the supporting market evidence. My presentation today will follow in the order that the disclosure document is and provide reference to the relevant pages for the board's ease of review. So the key themes you will hear throughout are assessments must be prepared annually. The assessment must reflect the market values of July 1st, 2024. The assessments must be fair, equitable, and mass appraisal based, and that the complainant has not provided sufficient or valid evidence to support a reduction. So on pages 4 to 6, and I just want to respond to comments by the complainant regarding the exterior photo of the subject property. Typically, we take a photo of the front of the property. So even though the complainant's property is in the back, this just shows the general quality of construction for the entire complex. And then on page 5 and 6, where we show the unit location of the maps, even if it's on the other side, the point to make on that was that it's a south-facing unit rather than a north-facing unit. So the south-facing units in South Canmore for the fourplexes are actually achieving a premium as referenced by market activity. So on page 8, property assessments for the town of Canmore are prepared in accordance with the requirements for the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. Alberta legislation prescribes that property assessments must be based on market value, and the market value means that it's the amount that a property might be expected to realize if it is sold in the open market between a willing seller to a willing buyer. Property assessments for the 2024 assessment year must be an estimate of the value of the property as of July 1st, 2024, which is our valuation date, and reflect the physical condition of the property on December 31st, 2024, which is our condition date. So this legislation further stipulates that an assessment of property based on market value must be prepared using mass appraisal, must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in the property, and must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. So mass appraisal is the legislated methodology used for valuing individual properties, and it involves the following process. Properties are stratified into groups of comparable properties. Common property characteristics are identified for the properties in each group, and a uniform valuation model is created for each property group and then applied back to that property group. So property assessments for residential fourplexes in the town of Canmore are determined using the market modified cost approach. This approach is a hybrid of both the cost and the sales comparison approaches to value. Under this approach, all improvements must first be valued based on the cost approach, and then the values are adjusted to reflect the current market conditions based on the sales transactions. This is the most appropriate method of valuation because it mirrors the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace, and there's also sufficient sales data to derive reliable market estimates. So sales between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2024 were analyzed, validated, and adjusted for time to the valuation date. This provides a reliable foundation for the model. So now on page 12, we show the property information that was used to calculate the property assessment. This shows that it is 1,715 square foot goods custom, 3-story, no basement, fourplex in the South Canmore neighborhood. So when the complainant is mentioning whether it's a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, we don't consider that, as can be shown. We don't have any kind of data for a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 3-bedroom for this type of property, and the reason for that is that we calculate the assessment based on the square footage. So combining number of bedrooms and the overall square footage is highly correlated, so they would be predicting the exact same thing. So that's statistically why we wouldn't include both. So on page 13, we demonstrate that the complainant had a duty to disclose the documentary evidence and any written argument by August 28th, 2025, and that was based on the notice of hearing, which was sent on July 31st, 2025, which outlined the disclosure responsibilities for both parties. The complainant was required to provide disclosure to the Assessment Review Board clerk and the opposing party. Although the complainant's disclosure was not received by the respondent, as it was sent to the wrong email address, it was sent to us on the wrong email address. We're not going to take any issue with the late submission for this hearing. Rather, the respondent does not believe that the complainant has met the evidentiary burden as laid out in the legislation, as there was no evidence to support the claims made. So the onus is on the complainant to show that the current assessment is incorrect and prove that the requested assessment is correct. This is reinforced in the summary of the board decisions provided on pages 13 to 17. In this case, the complainant has provided no time-adjusted market sales data, no assessment comparables, and only opinion-based arguments unsupported by accepted appraisal principles. Therefore, the evidentiary burden has not been met. On page 19, we explained that the complainant's reliance on an average per square foot calculation is not an accepted appraisal practice. As is the case in Tony Prysa versus the City of Edmonton, units of comparison are not the proper basis for selecting comparables. Property attributes must also be considered. Furthermore, the principles of economies of scales applies. Larger homes tend to have a larger per square foot value, lower per square foot value because additional square footage adds less marginal utility. Smaller homes can have a higher per square foot value because space is more valuable up to a threshold. And so that rule applies when all other things are equal. Every single thing is different but the size of the square footage or the lot, if that's what we're looking at. Therefore, simply averaging values and applying them blindly ignores the differences in layout, quality, and demand. The board has repeatedly rejected this approach. In addition, no supporting evidence has been provided by the complainant to substantiate that the per square footage request is correct. In addition, the complainant references the builder's RMS report stating that it's 1595 square foot. However, we have not seen any evidence to show that the 1715 square feet that is being used to prepare the assessment is incorrect. So moreover, the size difference between the two properties is only approximately 7%. So even if the smaller figure were applied, the complainant still has not demonstrated through valid sales evidence that this would materially change the market value. So now on to page 20. So this is the respondent's evidence. As mentioned, we are using the sales from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024, and they're adjusted to the current market conditions as of July 1st, 2024. So these are all similar properties, all in the South Canmore neighborhood, and they're all 3-story, no basement duplexes. So these comparables, so there's some notable differences between the complainant's information that he had provided from when we had originally received the inquiry during the inquiry period. And so the sales that were considered post facto, which we included for information to help the property owner understand the assessments, they aren't included here because as I'm coming on one side saying that we don't use those to defend the assessment. They were provided to the property owner for information, not in support. And then the other property, which was removed and not included in our submission was the property 22110, so number 2809 4th Street. And the only reason it was removed was because it was the largest square footage and we felt we had sufficient comparables to support the assessment without having an additional property that was 500 square feet larger than the subject property. So these comparables that we've provided are similar construction quality and finish. They were adjusted for the market conditions of July 1st, 2024, and they support a value in line with the subject's assessment at $1,304,000. So when we're looking at the data for these properties, because the square footage is relatively tight, I would say it's similar to, we have the range below the square footage and above the square footage of the subject property. And so these properties, if you're not looking at a per square foot basis, the subject property is the newest of them all. And this is where using unit of comparison detracts a little bit from the overall analysis. But when we look at the overall total assessments found there, the subject property's assessment at 1.304 falls nicely in line, with the last on the column, which is a little bit older property. It's a little bit bigger, and its assessment is accordingly larger or higher. So more details as to the specific property characteristics can be found on pages 30 to 48 of our submission. But we do feel that this information shows that the assessment is not only legislatively compliant, but also market supported. So in summary, the assessor respectfully submits that the 2024 property assessment for the subject property has been prepared in compliance with the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. The property has been assessed at $1,304,000 using the market modified cost approach, which is the most appropriate method for residential fourplex properties in the town of Canmore. The complainant has not met the evidentiary burden of proof required under Section 460(9) of the MGA to demonstrate how the assessment is incorrect or to establish that the requested value is correct. In addition, no disclosure of substantive evidence or valid market comparables was provided in accordance with MRAC regulation. Comparable properties that were analyzed by the assessor, which are of similar quality, construction, and location, they support the assessed value. By contrast, the complainant's approach relied on a per square foot averages, which do not follow accepted appraisal principles. They ignore economies of scale and fail to account for differences in the property attributes. Based on this, we do feel that the assessment is fair and equitable and reflective of the market value as of July 1st, 2024. And for these reasons, the assessor respectfully requests that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment at $1,304,000. Thank you. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. Mr. Midwinter, do you have any questions for Ms. Bannerman about her presentation? Please come to the podium.
In the assessor's opening comments, she explained why they did not, in trying to establish value for my property, look at truly comparable properties in terms of size. In other words, they didn't provide comparable two-bedroom units, similar quality and finishes and so forth. The reason that she said they didn't do so, that it didn't really matter because they adjust things on a per square foot basis, that everything's adjusted on a per square foot basis. They could take larger properties and adjust things on a per square foot basis to arrive at a comparable value or an applicable value for my two-bedroom unit, which is smaller. Yet later, she says that there doesn't need to be an adjustment exactly on a per square foot basis between the properties that have been provided and my property. She has said that I haven't provided the necessary data or supporting evidence to support my property. I don't need to provide additional data. I'm just critiquing the data you have provided. I don't need to get other units. Your units are fine. I accept that these are comparable buildings. I've looked at them all. They're all in the immediate area. They're all of good construction. They're all beautiful units, as is my unit. They're just larger. And I have taken her numbers and I have adjusted them on a per square foot basis to arrive at the value of my unit. And I arrive at the values that I've come up with. The valuation of my unit of $1,304,000 is $760 on a per square foot basis. And yet the units she's provided as comparable with her own numbers are $698 a square foot. So those units, $698 per square foot, that's the average of the 6 comparable units she's provided. And then she says, oh no, we're not going to use that number. Somehow, magically, mine is $760 square foot. Where is the data to support not applying a pro rata adjustment? I don't see it in any of your data. So I'm just critiquing her data. I'm not providing any other data except to critique her data. I think the data that she uses is fine, but then the conclusion is flawed because she's not applying the pro rata value of these comparable properties on a per square foot basis to my two-bedroom unit. It's as simple as that.
And what's your question for Ms. Bannerman?
where is the data to support not using a pro rata adjustment? And if there is no data, how are you arriving at a differential number?
Okay, so as I explained earlier, and just to clarify, we don't do adjustments on a per square foot basis. So we're looking at the overall assessment or the overall square footage, and we're finding the differences, but we're not looking solely at the square footage. We're looking at all the other property characteristics that impact the value. So when we're looking at preparing property assessments, we're looking at what a typical purchaser would be looking at and what they'd be willing to bear in a purchase price for property. So as mentioned, we have, and this is a well-stated appraisal law where, the law of diminishing returns, whereas each square footage gets higher, they're not worth as much once that original utility has been met. So there's that curve that's built into, and that's on lot size, that's on any type of anything that you could be considering on a per unit basis. So with regards to that, we've provided all of the property information for your property, which can be found, which is used in the calculation, which can be found on our page 12, as well as all of the comparables that we've provided. So those are the residential ratepayer reports that we've provided in there. And so those are all of the property characteristics that contribute to value. So I just want to point out, because although it wasn't implicitly asked, there's two very different roles when it comes to Assessment Review Board complaint process. So there's two different roles for the complainant versus the respondent. So it is the onus on the complainant to actually prove that their assessment is incorrect and what their correct assessed value should be and provide support for that. With the role of the respondent, what we're doing is we're just responding and to the complainant's evidence. In this case, based on the evidence that's been provided, we probably responded overly with the amount of detail and evidence that we've provided. However, we have provided that information. So anything that you had in your complaint package, we're required to respond to. We're not required to bring up new things. We're only responsible for responding to the complainant's evidence package. So just for clarity on the process.
I'm not asking for anything new. I'm asking you just to defend your own methodology.
And I believe I have in the information and the presentation that I've provided, but that'll be left up to the board to decide.
I don't believe you have.
Any further questions, Mr. Midwinter?
I don't.
Thank you. I'm looking at the panel. Any questions? I have a question. Sorry. It shows the property was year built 2019, and we heard from the complainant he bought it in end of 2020, I believe it was. Does that make any effect, any changes?
No.
So sold data probably shows 2021, or?
Well, it may, depending on when it transferred through Alberta Land Titles, it may be in 2021 if he bought it in the fall of 2020, possibly, especially with the delays that we had at that time with Alberta Land Titles. But the difference between the year built that we're using and the year that he purchased it is that when we're preparing assessments, we use the year from the start of construction. So not the end of construction, we use the start. So when they start digging into the ground, if they dig into the ground for foundation or just footings, that's the year we use.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you bought it vacant, it was new build, you're the first owner?
I don't believe the issue of 2019 versus 2020 is really germane to the debate at hand here.
No, but I'm asking.
Fair enough. I believe she is correct in that the unit must have started construction in 2019, was complete sometime in 2020, was sitting vacant for many months. And I came along and purchased it and closed it in December, if I remember correctly, December 2020.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Sure.
Okay. Complainant's rebuttal evidence. Any further questions from the respondent? Sorry? No? Any questions from the board? Arguments, summation. The complainant first. Any further arguments, please?
Well, well, at the risk of repeating myself, I believe that the assessor's approach to provide the 6 properties that she has that have been deemed to be comparable to my unit. I don't dispute that those aren't comparable properties. I dispute the methodology she has employed, which she has not explicitly scientifically disclosed as to how she has arrived at the $1,304,000 when you take the properties that she has provided, which are all larger, and you adjust them on a per square foot basis, you get a very different valuation for my property. And she herself has said that the adjustments should be made on a per square foot basis. So if they're not made pro rata, I don't understand how you would make them, except on a very subjective basis. I just submit that based on the data that is being provided, that the conclusion that a reasonable person would come to in terms of value are the values I disclosed in my letter of April the 25th. Again, depending on the square footage size that one picks for the unit. And again, I believe my unit is 1,595 square feet based on the data provided by my builder. So that's quite a significant variance relative to the value that the appraiser has placed on my unit, and I would just ask the board to consider my submission and make the appropriate decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Midwinter. The respondent, Ms. Bannerman.
Sure, so I'll try and be brief, but I'll go through most of the summary that I've provided previously. So we do respectfully submit that the property assessment for the subject property has been prepared in compliance with the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. We also feel that the complainant has not met the evidentiary burden of proof required under Section 460(9) of the MGA to demonstrate how the assessment is incorrect or to establish that the requested value is correct. In addition, no disclosure of substantive evidence or valid market comparables was provided in accordance with MRAC regulation. The comparables provided by the respondent, which are of similar quality, construction, and location, they support the assessed value of the subject property at $1,304,000. And by contrast, the complainant's approach relies on a per square foot average, which does not follow accepted appraisal principles. It ignores economies of scale, and it fails to account for differences in the property attributes. And I just want to be clear, I have not said that adjustments per square foot on a per square foot basis should be used. I believe I heard that from the complainant. And I do believe that I have demonstrated that this is in contravention to appraisal theory, and it is not the basis for us preparing our assessments. So just to be clear at this point. So based on the legislation, the case law, and the evidence that we've presented, the assessor submits that the assessment is fair and equitable, and that it's also reflective of the market value of this type of property. For these reasons, the assessor respectfully requests that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment at $1,304,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. Last word by the complainant. If you wish.
She's saying that I have not provided evidence to support my argument. I have presented that information. It's simply math. And I think that given the nature of the units, they're all comparable in quality. Some are a bit larger. Mine is a bit smaller. The only rational way to adjust it is based on square footage, on the square footage valuation. And that's what I've done. I've not taken issue with the units put forward as value, but they do not support, given my smaller unit, the valuation. It's an excessive valuation given the size of the unit. Simple as that.
Thank you, Mr. Midwinter. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation and your helpful presentations. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing.
Do I feel I've had a fair hearing? Yes, thank you.
Awesome. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess. 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes. Let's go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public, and this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 18267, municipal address at 621 Silvertip Road here in Canmore. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Christoph Breyer, and I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are Karen Mara and Laura Klippingdale. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? I see none. That's great. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your role in the hearing? Please indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint. And I see the complainant is not in attendance in person and not able to make it. That's what my understanding. So Mr. Foster is not here. And then I'm now asking the respondent, would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your position with the municipality?
My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thanks so much. The standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible, and we can address those things as we go. I will also take this time to remind everyone to please turn off any mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as was laid out? Everybody's satisfied? That's great. I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure? Awesome. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For tax roll 18267, we have a complainant package marked C1 of a complaint form of 2 pages. And we have respondent package marked R1, the respondent disclosure of 44 pages.
Thank you. Are there any other preliminary issues for the panel to address? Ms. Bannerman, please.
Sure. And so I'm here today regarding the 2024 property assessment at 621 Silvertip Road. And at the onset, for a preliminary issue, we respectfully request that the complaint be dismissed. As I will demonstrate, the complainant has not met the required onus of proof under sections 460(9) of the Municipal Government Act, nor complied with disclosure obligations under matters relating to assessment and complaints regulation. The central questions before the board are, has the complainant demonstrated, as required by law, that the assessment is incorrect? Has the complainant met the evidentiary burden of proof under section 460(9) of the MGA? And given their failure to do so, should the complaint be dismissed under sections 467 sub 2 of the MGA? So these 3 questions guide my presentation today. So on page 6, The notice of hearing was sent to the property owner on July 31st, 2025, apologies, and it clearly outlined the disclosure requirements. The complainant had until August 28th, 2025 to provide documentary evidence and written argument. They failed to provide anything to either the Assessment Review Board clerk or to the opposing party. The only information that was provided was on the C1, which was the complaint form, which states that things are not as this person would like, but there's no evidence or argument to support any of those claims. So under MRAC, Section 6B, a board must not hear any evidence that is not disclosed within the required timelines. The Alberta courts have reinforced this rule, confirming that non-disclosed evidence is inadmissible, and summaries of these decisions have been provided for you below. So the MGA is clear that the complainant bears the burden of proof to demonstrate that their assessment is incorrect. This principle has been well established by the Court of King's Bench and adopted by assessment review boards. Summaries of these decisions can also be found in our submission. So in each decision, boards reaffirmed that the onus rests with the party alleging the assessment is incorrect. In this manner, no evidence has been presented to discharge that onus. Even if the complainant had argued that their assessment should be reduced, they would need to prove that the current value is incorrect and that the requested value is correct. Here, no alternative valuation, comparables, or analysis have been provided. Without this, there's no basis to amend the assessment. In numerous cases, complaints have been dismissed where the complainant has failed to provide valid, on-time evidence. As well, boards have consistently ruled that unsupported verbal testimony or hearsay is insufficient. So in summary, the complainant failed to disclose any evidence or argument by the legislated deadline. The MGA and MRAC require the dismissal of undisclosed evidence. The complainant has not met the onus or the burden of proof to demonstrate that the assessment of $2,114,000 is incorrect, nor have they provided any evidence to support any alternative value. Given these facts, the respondent respectfully requests that the Assessment Review Board dismiss the complaint and confirm the 2024 assessment of $2,114,000. Thank you. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Benneman. Any questions? Well, in order to deal with this preliminary issue, I will ask for a 5-minute recess, and we'll come back in 5 minutes to handle this. So we're back online, and the board has decided to dismiss this hearing because the complainant has not provided any arguments and any evidence, and therefore we will dismiss it. Closing remarks are, at this time, I would like to ask the parties, if they felt they had a fair hearing today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing. Thank you. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity.